the event that facilitated this type of trade or interest in Japan started with international exhibition called World Expositions. So entire nations are participating. So it's sort of like Olympic Games. Once that started in 1851, everybody wanted to participate. So Japan, they are going there from 1862. So that's shortly before Meiji Restoration. And people who participated in like this international exhibition came back and said, well, we should educate our young people and we need more scientists, right? Otherwise, we will fall behind. So that's how they bet. This is 1889 is the wonderful Paris Exposition where Parisians or the French people decided to make the Eiffel Tower. That was one of the wonders of the world, right? The tall Eiffel Tower. In 1863-ish, when Japanese people went to the exhibition was 62 and the publication is 63. So when they went there, they didn't have any industrial products. They all had handcrafted work that we've studied in this class, right? Like sort of a Ogata Korin style beautiful lacquer boxes. So that was what, 62, but when Japan went to 1876 Philadelphia World Fair, they were able to show sort of a clock, very sophisticated clocks, or they had some small industrial items as well as their other products. And also in this kind of porcelains or crafts work that they are showing, they already created new styles that may be appealing to European and American audiences. As you know, like the furniture types, right, or seating arrangement in the house is all very different, right? So they created, for example, like ashtrays or European teacups with the saucers or table clocks. You know, they started to create sort of attractive merchandise for European and American clients. And this is a popular handbook. So right after Philadelphia World's Fair, a lot of American citizens wanted to travel to Japan. And these world expositions, they also showed artworks as well. So this is the kind of artworks that Japanese people will bring in. And these were much later for Paris exhibitions, like 1890s. So look at these two. Do you recognize who these figures are? Exactly the same figure. Avalokiteshvara. I don't know whether you remember it, but in Todaiji Temple, right, the 8th century, we've seen that Avalokiteshvara, he had 8 arms. Remember, that was a dry lacquer technique one. So just exactly same feature. Bodhisattva Kannon. Kannon is a Japanese name of calling Avalokiteshvara. So those iconographies were sent to world expositions. But I want you to pay attention to the techniques of it. So the right one is something that we are familiar with. That is painting on silk, right? So it's a very colorful painting, many layers of colors. And if you see here, what is this painted? The realistic depiction of a Kannon riding a dragon, that is oil painting. So you can see that by 1890s, Japanese people also learned how to paint with oil, which is European medium. So these are the kind of topics. This is what I mean by Japanese people appeals to European audiences. So this is a famous Pygmalion and Galatea story, right? The sculptor created a marble sculpture, and it's so beautiful that Pygmalion admired his own work and gave a lot of love and attention so that the statue came to life, became real human being, right? That's the story of birth of Galatea. So you can see that she's turning to flesh from the white marble. So that is Jerome, a popular French painter of the Romanticism period. And Japanese people also learned the story and then they create their own version of it. So he's a sculptor, he's like a Buddhist sculptor, but he also learned the story of a Pygmalion. So his creation turns out to be human being eventually, right? So those kind of story. And this is briefly what I was mentioning. With the Meiji Restoration, suddenly the Rimpa school, remember, or the Kano school of painting, or we also studied the Tosa school or Maruyama Okyo's school, you know, those painting schools, they will experience decline. In the age of westernization and modernization, they looked a little outdated, right? So In Kubota Baisen's work, as you can see here, he's one of the masters of Nihonga. Nihonga means Japanese style painting as opposed to yoga. So these are new words that you have to remember. So yoga means Western style painting. Nihonga learned European perspective. Do you see? Like it's a bird's eye view. So you look down on these two groups fighting each other. They depict this Navy soldiers on high tech like new boats with cannons and so forth. So battles by land, battle by land and sea. So 1894, they are talking about that Sino-Japanese War, the war between Japan and China. Using this event, Japanese people became very confident. They always thought that China is the big country with a lot of cultural heritage, right? So they wanted to learn from China. But then in the 19th century, late 19th century, Chinese army was no longer strong. So Japanese soldiers, after 1850, right, they've adopted that European style battleships from Europe and the US, and then they have modern technologies like guns. These are guns. They became very powerful people. That is one thing. So after the Sino-Japanese War, they became very confident. So the Nihonga masters were serving the country by making this type of painting. So now here the yoga. So I want you to read this very carefully. So in the beginning, they invited a master of oil painting from France. Antonio Fontanesi himself is Italian, but he was living in France. And do you know the word Barbizon School of Landscape? So that's like a Millet. I don't know whether you know this name, but Jean-Francois Millet, famous French artist, was also part of Barbizon. So he was teaching the naturalist landscape, and he taught many students, but the most famous one is Kuroda Seiki. You must know Kuroda Seiki. So who is Kuroda Seiki? He is the man of this type of painting, and instead of just regular landscape painting, which Japanese people liked, he started a new style of plein air. So what is plein air? It's a French word, and it means outdoor, like a fresh air. So artists, like around the 1880s and afterwards, they learned to paint outdoor. And if you don't paint outdoor, where can you paint? You can paint in the studio, right? Inside. So far, most of the artwork is all created in the indoor, right? You don't go outside to work on your art projects. You stay inside. But plein air school, that was a popular school of painters, especially after 1880s. French people, French artists, they would go to countryside or even to the park within the city, and then they would bring their portable easel, right? And then they are going to paint in front of it. So that's called the plein air school. And Kuroda Seiki, his family is from very well-established samurai families. His uncles was main supporters of Meiji Restoration. So his family sent Kuroda Seiki and other cousins to study either law or diplomacy in Paris. But Kuroda Seiki didn't study law. He studied art. So he started going to art studios that advocated for plein air school. So he studied there, and then he came back and he made this work, By the Lake. And I want you to remember the By the Lake, 1897. And you can see it is celebrated as exhibitions, and this is Kuroda Seiki himself. He was a controversial figure because he painted this nude. So this one does not remain in actual painting. It only exists in reproduction, like a picture like this. So it's a bare skin, right? A woman stands on the top, and can you imagine the Japanese, like decent people, looked at this? They were all shocked. And it was painted as early as 1893. So after a few times of scandals, he wanted to reestablish himself as a really reliable and respectful artist in Japan. And that's how he created the work, either called Lakeside or By the Lake, and submitted to an official art competition in Japan. Each year, government hosted an official art exposition, and this got the first prize. So after that, Kuroda he was teaching as a art professors and major advocates of yoga meaning European art. Plein air again, they really focus on the observation of lights, right? Like, and then also the colors look different, depends on the season and the direction of the sunlight, or if it's a cloudy day, right, it would look also different. And then he also put the figures in, so it's not just landscape anymore.